Welcome to a new episode in our series Astrology in the 21st Century. Today we will talk about this book. It's the habilitation treatise of Dr. Gustav-Adolf Schoener, Astrology in European Religious History, its philosophical foundations through the ages. You find the book on Amazon. We start with Amazon in Germany. There the price in the book, in the print edition, is 50 euros. Then we have Australia. It's quite a higher price. You might consider to order the whole thing from Germany. And then we have United Kingdom. There it's £40. And we have in America, it's again rather pricey. So I will take from now on the German edition. I think this is this one. Let me see. Yeah, this is the German edition. It's in Kindle, it's 38 euros, and in print, it's 50 euros. And there is a possibility to look inside the book. Oh, I won't take this. Okay. So this is how it looks like. And it has a view into the book. And I will read to you about the contents. It has an introduction, and then A, astrology in the present day, astrology historically and critically. C, religion, science, astrology. What is astrology? What is religion? What is science? Structure and reasoning, selecting and restricting sources. And chapter 1, the structure of astrology 1, an analogy between the cosmos and humans. 1.1, astrology in the geocentric model, Mesopotamian omen astrology, astrology in the early modern period, astrology in the heliocentric model, Johannes Kepler, Isaac Newton, Carl Jung and Thomas Ring's psychological symbolic reinterpretation of astrology, and then subjects from Jung and Ring. Then chapter 2, astrology and science in the present day, with subchapters from knowledge of divine wisdom to excluding mythical worldviews, astrology as a science of space and time, Jean-Claude Weiss, the Fukushima nuclear reactor accident from an astrological perspective, critical objections to astrology, subsections Karl Popper, Theodor Adorno, Paul Feyerabend, and then the experience argument in astrology, Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, the evidence argument in the past and the present day, empirical studies, the Mars effect, digression, empirical methods in Mesopotamian omen astrology, chapter 3, the structure of astrology 2, celestial deities and intelligible nature. Subchapters, property names and deity names for planets from the Sumerian to the Roman period, Plotinus 1 and the world soul, intelligible cosmos and celestial deities in 20th century esoteric astrology, Thomas Aquinas and the stars, spiritual substances, Philip Melanchthon and the vital cosmos, Martin Luther and celestial beings contrary to the first commandment, Father Gerhard Voss and the divinely infused cosmos. And then it goes on with digression. How religious is the astrological worldview in search of a suitable transcendent term? And the subsection, the divinity of spaces, the zodiac in the third 360-degree sphere of the ecliptic subsections, the primacy of the tropic over the sidereal zodiac, the mythological and intelligible interpretation of the sections of the ecliptic in the ancient world and in the modern period, and it further divided into origins, constellations, and signs of the zodiac in the modern period. And then it goes on with Alice M. Bailey, Carl Jung, Fritz Riemann, and Thomas Ring. Conclusions. And then chapter 4, astrology as a misunderstood science, with John David North and the physical premises of astrology, Aristotle's meteorology, Aristotle's ether and celestial sounds, elements and qualities in Greek natural philosophy and Stoic meteorology. And it goes on with chapter 5, astrology in the context of modern societies, with the subsections astrology's hermeneutical principle, astrology and individualized construction of meaning in the present day. There is a bibliography, reference books, and encyclopedias. And then you can go on and read 14 pages of the introduction, but you can read by yourself. What I will do with the authorization of the author, I will read to you about Thomas Ring, because the English speaking world basically is not really informed about the importance of the most famous astrologer in Germany of the 20th century. On page 79, there is the chapter Thomas Ring, and I quote, "In the German-speaking world, it was Thomas Ring, 1892 till 1983, who re-established astrology as an independent discipline based on experiences in its teachings and practice, and went on to work principally as an astrologer himself. His best known texts, including Astrology Without Superstition, 1972, and in particular his 4-volume Astrological Anthropology, made him perhaps the most important and influential astrology in the German-speaking world in the second half of the 20th century. His modernized approach to psychological astrology has been incorporated into the statutes of the German Astrologers Association, Deutscher Astrologenverband, the Swiss Astrologers Union, Schweizerischer Astrologenbund, and the Austrian Astrologers Association's Österreichischer Astrologenverband. Ring aimed to re-establish astrology in modern times, doing away with an outdated deterministic vision of astrology. To do this, he coined the term revised astrology. This aspiration to fundamentally revise astrology led Ring to explore the possibilities and limits of assertion of astrological interpretations, taking the contemporary state of psychology, sociology, biology, and cultural sciences into account. Revised astrology needs to resolve 2 problems. The first, as has already been addressed, is the shift from the geocentric to the heliocentric model, connected with the question of whether and in what way astrology's theoretical foundation is affected by it. whether astrology's justification can survive this shift, and if so, why? The second problem area concerns Carl Jung's archetypes, which he considered suitable for re-establishing astrology after Copernicus. An essential key in this new basis is the question dealt with but not conclusively answered by Jung, whether the description of the celestial bodies was actually just projection or more. First, a foundation needs to be established for how astrology was able to survive the shift from the geocentric to the heliocentric model. I will take the computer to show the picture of the book. Okay. First, a foundation needs to be established for how astrology was able to survive the shift from the geocentric to the heliocentric model. We were there. Thomas Ring points to the fact that the founders of modern science, Regiomontanus, Copernicus, Tycho Brahe, Galileo, Kepler, and Georg Joachim Rheticus, all pursued astrology, and that with the exception of Regiomontanus and Brahe, these were among the first advocates of the new heliocentric model. In order to understand this adherence to astrology, despite the reinterpretation of the cosmos, it is important to do away with conventional but long obsolete conceptions of astrology that have been presented by both astrologers and non-astrologers since Copernicus' time. Thomas Ring prescribes expressly rejecting the belief in the effects of celestial bodies that have an impact on the course of human lives. If there is a connection between stars and humans, it should not be conceived of in this way. If astrology's hypotheses are to be valid, they cannot be explained, not alone at least, through physical effects. For Thomas Ring, such a justification of astrology would not have been tenable beyond the shift away from the geocentric model. It would also be impossible to explain why the above proponents of the heliocentric model continue to practice astrology. What are these other non-physical foundations then? In searching for an answer, Thomas Ring points to astrology's origins. These demonstrate that from the very beginning, there were two lines of reasoning that were often not clearly distinguishable. Deeper analysis shows that the two lines of reasoning follow very different trajectories. Belief in the stars dates to a time when humans did not yet dare consider themselves authors of their own thoughts. Crucial information was provided by the gods, either intuitively or via oracles. They saw celestial bodies as an expression of the cosmos. The relationship between the two could be understood through the allegory as above so below, as an analogy or seen as an effect from above that assigned a fate. The stars could be either indicators or effectuators. Effects of the stars and the analogies are the two divergent theoretical foundations, both dating back to the ancient world, that lend astrology plausibility and justify practicing it. In each case, the aim was to understand individual fate in relation to divine beings and forces. However, the two justifications have different anthropological conditions. In the case of assumed effects from the stars, all humans were subject to physically conveyed compulsions. Quote, one had to reluctantly accept one's lot or endure it as a fate willed by God, end of quote. In the case of an analogous relationship between the cosmos and humans, there was no determining compulsion, but a free interaction between spiritual beings that communicated with one another. Quote, one could choose one's own fate, end of quote. Especially, quote, if the present could be improved with a view to the future life, end of quote. Ancient astrology was therefore familiar with both effects from the stars with the consequence of being subject to a determined fate, and analogies with the scope to live freely. And there's a long footnote to this. And then on page 82, both of these theoretical models that relate to humans and the cosmos were familiar to the proponents of the heliocentric model named above, and both were fiercely contested in the astrology of the Renaissance. Astrology was a means of placing free human action in a broad frame of reference that comprised scientific and spiritual issues. This included the question of astrology's borders, which Johannes Kepler in particular dealt with in detail. Thomas Ring provides a wealth of citations and references to show that the question of the geocentric or heliocentric model hardly played a role in these complex discussions. On the contrary, if anything, it was proponents of the heliocentric model who justified and practiced astrology, as the above first quote of Johannes Kepler made clear. On the other hand, it was often traditionalists who clung to the geocentric model and emerged as opponents to astrology, such as at times Martin Luther. Evidently, and Thomas Ring is completely right in this case, the discussion about astrology was largely independent of the question of how the sun revolved around the earth, or vice versa. Ring refutes the conception that astrology's continued existence since the early modern period can be explained as a force of habit. Old Testament specialist Jürgen Ebach and medievalist Hubertus Fischer made comments along these lines. As noted in the introduction, Professor Fischer claimed that the worldview woven by the stars trickled lazily through the ages, practically unaffected by the storms of progress. In Professor Fischer's opinion, the astrological tradition had been so deeply anchored in European thinking since ancient times that it did not disappear once its preconditions had been refuted. Jürgen Ebach also endorses this view when he writes that astrology is tied at its core to the geocentric model without disappearing with the refutation of its precondition. See also introduction, chapter B. Complex theories and experiences, anthropological and psychological questions about freedom and determinism of will provide astrology with a basis to continue existing beyond the geocentric model. What useful information can be derived from these multifaceted discussions about astrology and its continued existence beyond the shift in worldview for a revised astrology commensurate to the requirements of the 20th century though? The foundations for this is a modern conception of humans, which Thomas Ring derives substantially from Carl Jung's individual psychology, and which he supplements with social psychological aspects. His first concern is to establish the anthropological conditions that meet the requirements of a modern psychological conception of humans as well as astrology. Ring summarizes that the two explanations cited from astrology's origins, the belief in effects from the stars and an analogous system of correspondence, are simultaneously correct and incorrect. The handed down view of influences from the stars is to be rejected, as much as the belief derived from this is an absolutely inevitable fate. For Ring, this belief in effects from the stars that predetermine events and make them predictable are signs of a vulgar astrology or a feature of primitivity in its fundamental views. On the other hand, there is no dispute that free humans' behavior has to meet the needs of external circumstances and is subject to limitations. There is therefore no such thing as absolute free will. This anthropological contingency between free responsibility and limited freedom to act ultimately brings together astrology's two lines of reasoning. Over the course of the millennia, astrology correctly identified that both factors underlie all human action. At the time Ring was writing in the 20th century, it was possible to state that compulsion and freedom exist as a correlative pair of concepts. Humans' reality of character includes the experience of taking responsibility for one's actions, as well as the experience that this responsibility is conditioned by determined structures which themselves can be adapted by environmental influences. Modern astrology, Ring concludes, can only be founded on this anthropological basis. This then leads to the second problem. Thomas Ring builds directly on Carl Jung in his understanding of astrological symbols, which describe basic mental substance as a reflex of human consciousness embedded in a social and natural environment, making astrological symbols essentially human experience projected onto the sky. Thomas Ring considers this projection theory a key reason why astrology plays a significant role in contemporary religious culture in modern societies, and why it is not only present, but has even gained greater acceptance in the world. If astrological symbolism is an expression of general human experience, Ring considers that this explains the disposition towards astrology often encountered independently of level of education. This new interest is primarily triggered by the fact that astrological symbolism addresses certain patterns of personal mental experience that all humans have in common, meaning that merely the astrological terminology, the symbols and the knowledge of one's own sign of the zodiac peddled in mass media, which hardly anyone can escape in today's society, touches on and activates basic mental substance, arousing interest in the truest sense of the word. However, this interest is mostly vague and is satisfied by unthinking and contradictory daily prognosis. Thomas Ring draws a clear distinction here. The market that satisfies the search for rapid orientation in daily horoscopes, the search for assurance in day-to-day life, the wish to know when something will take place is part of vulgar astrology. Rooting out symbols through painstaking analysis elucidates a level of basic mental substance. In this way, a general early interest in astrology often leads to a genuine need for insight into actually existing structures, behavior patterns, and events. Going back To the anthropological conditions of astrology, Thomas Ring aims to go beyond the project theory detailed above. The human experience is more likely astrology's starting point than the influence of the stars, but it constitutes more than projection. If it were merely projection, it would not be possible to read explanations of individual events and circumstances inversely from the stars. Now, though, experience teaches us that it is indeed possible to inversely discern typical traits and features that characterize a person or event from the movements of celestial bodies. This is the conclusion reached by someone who has been convinced by their own experience that astrological thinking is not a fantasy, but grounded in a reality. And so on. I will now show you a film list. You find it on YouTube. It's on the channel Kosmologie Mikronährstoffe. And if you scroll down on the playlists, you find a couple of videos with the author of this Habilitationsschrift with the title Astrology in European Religious History, Its Philosophical Foundations Through the Ages, published by the scientific publisher Peter Lang. And on this information here, you should find the playlist. It's rather, you have to scroll down quite a bit. I put quite a number of playlists together. And if you look up here, there it is. Dr. Habil Gustav-Adolf Schoener, here it is. And if you click on complete playlist, the first video is a talk I did with him in German about his Habilitationsschrift when it was published in German and when he got his Dr. Habil. And then he spoke about his Habilitation paper on the Symposium 2018 on the Association of German-speaking Astrological Communities. And this one is a talk about his Habilitation. Now, if you speak German and want to read Thomas Ring in the original, then you could go to astronova.de. Here it is, the address, Astronova, astronova.de. And if you type in Ring, then you get Thomas Ring. And he has quite a number of books. There ist Frühe astrologische Schriften, Tierkreis und menschlicher Organismus, Existenz und Wesen aus kosmologischer Sicht, kosmische Signaturen des Lebens. And here you have the first 3 books of his anthropological oeuvre, the astrological anthropology, astrologische Menschenkunde, Bände 1 bis 3. And let's see, I suppose the book 4 is not available. Then we have the Grundgefüge, and when he was, after he died, some texts of his estate. And here is the book number 4, Astrologische Menschenkunde, Band 4. I believe you can order this worldwide from astronova.de, but you might be advised, if you are not on Amazon.de or in Germany, you should probably email. Let me see. Yeah, here's the email address: info@astronova.com. If you write an email to the publisher, he will explain to you how you can get all the books of Astronova and of course the books of Thomas Ring shipped to you wherever you live, and how much the postal would be. Then we have the total of all 4 books, Astrologische Menschenkunde, as you see, all 4 books, and it's only 60 euros. So if you speak German, this might be an idea for you to get to know the most famous German astrology in the second half of the 20th century. Then we have some lectures of Thomas Ring in Zürich, Lebenszeugnisse, Strukturbilder genialer Menschen, Symbolkreis der Schöpfung, Astrologie, wie ich sie sehe, on audio CD, then his alphabet. So you see, he was quite a prolific writer, and at least now a little bit of Thomas Ring is available in English if you go into this book, the Habilitationsschrift, Dr. Gustav-Adolf Schoener. Now, what do we know about the author? I know him personally. He was a senior lecturer at the Institute of Religious Science, and the book says Dr. Gustav-Adolf Schoener attained his doctorate from the Institute of Philosophy at Leibniz University in Hanover, and further achieved his habilitation at the Institute of Religious Studies. His primary areas of research and teaching revolve around religions, worldviews, and esotericism as manifested in antiquity, early modern times, and modernity in the history of European religion. Moreover, he is a language teacher for Latin and ancient Greek at the Institute of Theology within Leibniz University. He does do courses in Hanover in this institute in Greek and Latin, and he actually has a lecture series about Johannes Kepler. And in our series about free will in astrology, I did a talk in German with him. This is the other channel, not the one you are watching this video. The channel Astrotalk, Traditionelle Astrologie. And here we have him. There he is. Free will in astrology. So there's quite some information available. And I hope I gave you some insights in his work, Dr. Gustav-Adolf Schoener, Astrology in European Religious History, with Philosophical Foundations Through the Ages, published by Peter Lang. Thanks for stopping by. Until next time.